With us now, David Weinstein, partner at Hinshaw & Culbertson, and he's also a former U.S. attorney. So the hospital says Miami-Dade police were there, that they had to yield to their orders. But explain to us this issue of jurisdiction and what it means for a tribe and an independent nation.
I think the easiest way to compare all this is that you have to consider the Indian reservation and the Indian nation a separate nation, and for purposes of the Child Custody Enforcement Act, they're a separate state. So they can make their own rules there, they follow procedures there, and they can issue orders. That was fine. The breakdown in the process here is that any time you bring an order from out of state into our state, you have to have it domesticated, or you have to have a state of Florida court say this is a valid order. And the reason for that is that you're entitled to due process, whether the order is entered by the Indian nation or by another state. It was apparent here from what we've seen of the order that there was no due process given to the father. He wasn't given a right to speak on his own behalf and to say why he and the mother should be entitled to have the child here.
Is there any legal recourse now for this couple?
Well, they need to file a suit. They'll start by filing a suit here in state court to have an emergency order issued that would authorize a proceeding to take place. The problem is going to be now that baby is back on the reservation on the separate sovereign. It's nearly impossible to get law enforcement back in there. The officers who came off of the reservation with this order, they're empowered to act only on the reservation, so that's why they went to the Miami-Dade police. Again, there was a breakdown in the system. Miami-Dade police should have said that's an order from the Indian reservation. It's not a state order. We can't enforce that. Somewhere in the middle, an exchange was missed.
So do the police have any kind of exposure to any kind of legal problems for having somehow missed the fact that this was an order from the Miccosukee and not from a Florida state judge?
They have the exposure that they didn't follow the rules and they didn't follow the law and they didn't look at what was done. But the problem here is the recourse is, how do we get the child back to the mother? How do we determine that the mother is the best parent to be with this child? All of the laws...
Isn't that always the assumption, though, that the mother is the best person, the mother and father, the parents should have, and, you know, they give the preference to the parents.
Preference is given to the parents, but you have to put that aside because you have to examine the conditions. If, for example, and that's not the case here, the mother was found to be unfit to care for this child, then simply because she is the mother, or if the father, same conditions would apply, they don't automatically get to have custody of the child. What's always looked at is the best interest of the child, and here that's not being done. They're not considering the best interest of the child. We haven't seen the full context of the order. What was the reason that the tribal judge said the grandmother should have custody? Was it simply because the grandmother didn't like who the father was? If that's the case, that's not enough. If there are some other valid reasons, then that would withstand scrutiny, and then if domesticated, she might be entitled to have the baby.
What about legal exposure for the hospital who kind of allowed this to happen? Or were they just saying, you know, we have Miami-Dade, we're under the jurisdiction of Miami-Dade police, and they came in and told us what to do, and we have to obey them?
Again, just because an officer comes to you with a piece of paper and says, I have a warrant here, or I have some sort of authorization here, you need to double check. I'm not suggesting that any one particular person was at fault here, but certainly there are rules and procedures that should be followed. They should have picked up the phone, perhaps called their legal counsel and said, hey, before we go forward with this, we have tribal police here with an order from the tribal office, and now they're asking Miami-Dade to help them serve it. There was a break again in the exchange. Somebody should have picked up that phone to find out whether or not that order was valid.
Quite a legal predicament for this couple right now, dealing with the Native American reservation rules and the rules of the state of Florida. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
for
David.
explaining it for us.